Ladies and gentlemen, there is something unshakable about a woman who prays. She may not shout, she may not argue, she may not even respond to the chaos around her, but heaven moves when she opens her mouth. The world calls it weakness when she stays silent. What they don't understand is that silence doesn't mean surrender, it means strategy. When a praying woman walks into a room, atmosphere shifts, chains begin to tremble, darkness starts to panic. Because her power doesn't come from people, it comes from presence. Her strength doesn't come from applause, it comes from alignment. You see, a woman who fights in the flesh can only go so far. Her energy runs out. Her emotions wear thin, but a woman who prays taps into a strength that never runs dry. She fights battles on her knees that others lose standing up. When she intercedes, she's not just talking, she's legislating. Heaven hears her. Hell fears her. A woman who prays understands that victory doesn't always look like vengeance. It looks like peace. It looks like wisdom. It looks like knowing when to let go and when to stand firm. She knows that the battle isn't hers. It belongs to the Lord. That's what makes her dangerous. Because when you've given the fight to God, there's nothing left for the enemy to threaten you with. She's not intimidated by delay because she knows prayer is working even when she can't see it. She's not distracted by gossip because she's too focused on glory. She's not consumed by fear because she's anchored in faith. You can't defeat a praying woman because she doesn't fight you back. She takes you to God. She doesn't try to prove her worth. She prays through her wounds. She doesn't crumble under pressure. She turns pressure into prayer power. Every tear she's cried became a seed of strength. Every trial she's faced became training for triumph. Every heartbreak became an altar where she learned to worship instead of worry. That's why she doesn't fear storms anymore. She knows how to speak peace to them. The woman who prays has learned that her secret weapon is not in her hands, it's in her spirit. It's not in her words, it's in her worship. Challenge, love enough, and care enough. It's not in her anointing. And that's why the enemy keeps attacking her, because he knows that when she prays, strongholds break, destinies unlock, and generations shift. She doesn't just change her circumstances, she changes history. She doesn't just survive, she multiplies strength. When she bows her head, heaven stands at attention. When she opens her mouth, angels are deployed. When she declares the word, the enemy has to flee. So don't underestimate a praying woman. She's not fragile, she's fortified. She's fortified, she's not passive, she's powerful. She's not losing, she's learning. Every time she kneels in prayer, she rises in authority. There is something extraordinary about a woman who understands that her power is not found in possessions, positions, or people, but in prayer. When she learns to kneel before God, she discovers a strength that cannot be shaken, a peace that cannot be stolen, and a faith that cannot be broken. Prayer becomes her lifeline, her language, her weapon, and her shield. It is in those quiet moments when the world goes silent and her spirit becomes loud that she finds her true identity and authority. A woman who prays knows that power doesn't come from being seen, it comes from being surrendered. She doesn't depend on applause to affirm her worth, she depends on alignment to anchor her soul. When she prays, she plugs into the divine current that fuels her destiny. She understands that she can't pour out strength she hasn't received. So before she faces the day, she enters the presence of the one who sustains her. Before she answers to people, she listens to the whisper of heaven. Before she steps out in confidence, she bows down in humility. That is the rhythm of her life, down before up, surrender before success, prayer before power. There are moments when life tries to convince her that she's not enough. The storms roar, the disappointments stack up, and the weight of responsibility feels unbearable. But when she turns to prayer, she remembers who she is and whose she is. Prayer doesn't always change her circumstances immediately, but it always changes her perspective. Reminds her that she is not operating on human strength, but divine supply. When her knees touch the floor, heaven touches her heart. Prayer is her power source because it keeps her grounded in truth. It silences the noise of fear and amplifies the voice of faith. It shifts her from panic to peace, from confusion to clarity, from weakness to wisdom. When she prays, she doesn't just speak, she aligns herself with divine intention. She begins to see through the eyes of the Spirit, not through the lens of struggle. She learns that sometimes the most powerful thing she can do is not to react, but to remain still and pray. She may not have control over everything happening around her, but prayer gives her control over how she responds. And that is where her strength lies. The enemy may attack her mind, her emotions, her family, and her dreams, but he cannot cut off her connection to God. As long as she can pray, she can fight. As long as she can pray, she can rise. As long as she can pray, she can overcome. There's a reason the enemy fears a praying woman. He knows that when she prays, she invites divine intervention. She summons angels, releases breakthrough, and awakens power. He knows that prayer gives her discernment to see his traps and the courage to walk right past them. Prayer turns her fear into fire, her anxiety into authority, exhaustion into endurance. It gives her the capacity to stand tall in seasons that should have broken her. Her prayer doesn't have to be perfect, it just has to be pure. It's not about the right words, but about a right heart. Sometimes her prayer sounds like worship. Sometimes it sounds like weeping. Sometimes it's full of words. Other times it's silent tears. Every form of prayer carries weight. Heaven recognizes her voice even when it trembles. God collects every tear, hears every whisper, moves in ways she can't always see. Prayer is her recharge station. When the world drains her, when responsibilities weigh her down, her faith feels fragile, she returns to prayer and finds renewal. It's in those sacred moments that she releases what she cannot handle and receives what only God can give. Peace begins to flood her soul. Strength begins to fill her spirit. Hope begins to rise again. She walks away from prayer not necessarily with all the answers, with the assurance that the one who holds the answers is walking with her. When she prays, her circumstances may not immediately shift. Something inside her always does. She becomes steadier, calmer, wiser, stronger. She begins to carry herself differently, not out of pride, but out of power. Because she knows she's not walking alone. The storms may rage, but her anchor holds firm. Her faith becomes unshakable because she's rooted in communion with the Creator. Woman who prays understands that power doesn't always look like action. It often looks like alignment. She doesn't rush ahead of God. She waits for His direction. She doesn't rely on her own understanding. She leans on divine wisdom. She doesn't crumble when things go wrong. She turns her worry into worship. Prayer becomes her oxygen. She can't live without it. In a world that celebrates independence, she finds her power in dependence. She depends on God for guidance, for strength, for provision, for protection. Dependence doesn't make her weak, it makes her unstoppable. Because she's not operating on limited human energy. She's connected to an unlimited source. She can pour out love even when she's been hurt. She can forgive even when she's been betrayed. She can persevere even when she's exhausted. Why? Because prayer replenishes what life depletes. Every season of her life is covered in prayer. When she's uncertain, she prays for wisdom. When she's afraid, she prays for courage. When she's waiting, she prays for patience. When she's blessed, she prays in gratitude. Prayer keeps her balanced. It reminds her that every good thing comes from above, and every difficult thing can be turned for good. She doesn't pray only when she's in trouble. She prays because she knows that prayer keeps her connected to the source of her purpose. It's her way of staying plugged into the power that sustains her destiny. She prays before she acts, before she speaks, before she decides, because she understands that every great victory begins with great prayer. When others see her strength, they might admire her courage. What they don't see is the countless hours she's spent on her knees seeking God's face. They don't see the moments she's cried out in the dark, interceded for her family, or worshiped through her pain. Her power is private before it ever becomes public. Her strength is spiritual before it's seen in the physical. That is why she carries peace in the middle of pressure. That's why she smiles even when life feels heavy. That's why she doesn't crumble under chaos. Because prayer has trained her to trust the process even when she doesn't understand it. She knows that God is always working behind the scenes. So she keeps praying, not because she's religious, but because she's relational. Not because she's desperate, but because she's devoted. Prayer is not her last resort, it's her first response. It's not her backup plan, it's her battle plan. And through it all, she remains rooted, radiant, and resilient, because the secret of her power is not in her strength, it's in her surrender. And when a woman surrenders to God in prayer, there's nothing she cannot overcome. Her power is not what the world gives, it's what heaven imparts. And as long as she keeps praying, she'll keep rising, glowing, and growing. There is a profound power in a woman who knows the art of silence. In a world that celebrates loudness, aggression, and constant reaction, she chooses to pause, to reflect, and to listen. Her silence is not a sign of surrender, it is a sign of wisdom. It is the mark of someone who understands that not every battle needs to be fought with words or actions. She has discovered that there is more strength in restraint than in rashness, more influence in patience than in panic, more victory in strategy than in struggle. Silence is her shield. While others may rush to respond, she chooses to wait on the Lord. She doesn't react to every accusation, criticism, or confrontation. Instead, she prays, she reflects, and she positions herself with intentionality. She knows that speaking too soon can cloud the clarity of truth. She knows that responding without discernment can feed the fire of conflict. And she knows that there are battles that are not hers to fight, but the Lord's. A woman who masters silence understands timing. She knows that the right word at the wrong time can destroy opportunities. She knows that a rushed response can cost her peace. She knows that waiting on God's direction allows her to respond with power, purpose, and precision. Silence in her life is not emptiness, it is preparation. It is the quiet before the storm, the pause before the breakthrough, the calm before the declaration. Her silence is intentional. It is not fear, it is focus. It is not weakness, it is strength. It is not apathy, it is authority. While the world may perceive her quietness as passivity, she understands that it is her secret weapon. Silence gives her the ability to listen to the whispers of wisdom, to sense the movements of the Spirit, to discern the motives of those around her. In silence, she gathers knowledge, evaluates circumstances, and aligns herself with divine strategy. Seasons when life seems to demand that she fight, argue, or prove herself, but she resists the temptation to engage in every dispute. She has learned that speaking without direction can multiply problems instead of solving them. Silence allows her to rise above the noise, to see clearly through the confusion, and to act with integrity rather than impulse. She doesn't need to justify herself to every critic. She doesn't need to defend every decision. She doesn't need to explain her journey to those who don't understand it. Her silence becomes a statement louder than words could ever be. A woman who embraces silence also knows the value of listening. In the quiet, she hears what others cannot hear. She discerns hidden motives, uncovers truths, and recognizes opportunities that those who are loud or reactive miss entirely. She understands that listening is as important as speaking, that observation is as powerful as action. Patience can often accomplish what aggression cannot. Her silence is also her sanctuary. In a world full of chaos, noise, and conflict, she retreats to stillness. In those moments, she reconnects with God, refreshes her spirit, and finds clarity for the next step. Silence allows her to heal from wounds, regain focus, and strengthen her resolve. It is in the quiet that she realigns with her purpose, reminding herself that she is not alone and that the battles she faces are already under God's authority. She knows that silence is not an action, it is intentional action that often carries more weight than words. When she chooses not to react, she is not weak, she is strategic. When she refrains from speaking, she is not passive, she is powerful. When she withholds judgment, she is not indifferent, she is insightful. Her restraint is a reflection of her wisdom, her faith, and her understanding of God's timing. There are times when silence becomes a mirror reflecting strength to the world. Those who try to provoke her or diminish her influence are often surprised by her calmness. Her composure in the midst of provocation demonstrates a mastery over self that others envy. They may see it as a quiet, but it is louder than any argument, bolder than any confrontation, and more effective than any impulsive reaction. Her silence disarms hostility, diffuses tension, and commands respect. A woman who knows the power of silence also knows when to speak. She understands that words are precious and their impact is multiplied when spoken with wisdom. She speaks not to argue or prove a point, but to declare truth, release insight, or bring encouragement. Words carry authority because they are seasoned with patience and discernment. When she does speak, people listen, not because she shouts, because they recognize the depth of thought, preparation, and alignment with God behind her voice. Her silence is also a tool of spiritual warfare. While others fight with fists, arguments, or aggression, she prays in the quiet. She intercedes without distraction, petitions God with persistence, releases spiritual authority without a sound. Her prayers, spoken in private, shape outcomes in ways the world cannot see. She understands that the battle is not always in the visible, but in the spiritual realm. And through her silence, she activates power that is unstoppable. Furthermore, silence cultivates humility. By choosing not to dominate conversations or seek validation, she demonstrates reliance on God's guidance rather than human approval. She does not need to prove herself to the world because she knows her value is confirmed by the one who created her. In a society that pressures women to compete, conform, and be constantly heard, her quiet confidence becomes revolutionary. Silence is also her shield against negativity. When criticism comes, jealousy arises, or when betrayal stings, she does not respond impulsively. She allows God's timing to work, trusting that justice belongs to Him. Her restraint protects her from unnecessary conflict and preserves her integrity. By not reacting in haste, she maintains control over her emotions, reputation, destiny. In every area of her life, silence is a strategy. It teaches patience, strengthens discernment, and builds resilience. It allows her to respond with wisdom rather than anger, with grace rather than guilt, and with clarity rather than confusion. Silence becomes the space where she plans, prays, and positions herself for victory. It is in the quiet that she gathers the resources, courage, and vision she needs to overcome obstacles and fulfill her purpose. Ultimately, woman who embraces silence knows that it is not a lack of voice. It is a display of power. It is not weakness. It is wisdom. It is not surrender, it is strategy. She walks through life with calm determination, grounded in faith, guided by wisdom, and aligned with God's plan. And the world, watching her composed, measured, and unwavering, may not understand her, but it cannot deny her influence. Her silence speaks volumes. It tells the enemy that she is untouchable. It tells doubters that her strength is unshakable. It tells God's children that patience and prayer yield power. Her silence is not empty. It is full of purpose, power, and promise. She is a force to be reckoned with because she has mastered the art of stillness. Through it, she has mastered herself. There is a dimension of strength that many women never fully recognize, a power that transcends the natural and taps into the supernatural. It is the understanding that the battles she faces are not always fought with fists, voices, or force, but with faith, prayer, and spiritual authority. Woman who knows this truth realizes that spiritual warfare is far more effective than any physical reaction. She understands that reacting in the flesh can solve nothing lasting, but fighting in the spirit moves mountains, shatters chains, and brings lasting victory. Too often, women are taught that power is measured by how loudly they can assert themselves, how aggressively they can defend their rights, or how decisively they can strike back when wronged. But true power, divine power, is not found in the fight. It is found in the source. She has learned that when she engages in physical confrontation, whether through argument, revenge, or intimidation, she may win a moment. She risks losing her peace, her focus, and her integrity. Spiritual warfare, however, elevates her above the battlefield entirely. A woman who prays first, intercedes first, and moves in the spirit first understands that her words and actions are not her ultimate weapons. Ultimate weapon is the power of God flowing through her life. Every prayer she prays, every declaration she makes in faith, every moment she yields to God's guidance becomes a strategic strike against the forces that oppose her. She knows that battles in the natural are temporary. battles in the spirit are eternal. When she encounters opposition, she doesn't lash out in anger. She doesn't retaliate impulsively. She doesn't allow hurtful words, betrayal, or injustice to dictate her response. Instead, she rises above the physical by anchoring herself in prayer. She calls on God to fight on her behalf, knowing that His strength surpasses any human capability. She has learned that the enemy may attack her circumstances. He cannot defeat the power of the Spirit operating through her. Her spiritual warfare begins with discernment. She knows the battlefield is not always what it appears to be. The real fight is often unseen. Spiritual forces seeking to influence her mind, her emotions, and her decisions. She recognizes deception, resists temptation, and maintains clarity even in chaos. She understands that reacting in the natural without spiritual insight can be dangerous because it may escalate conflicts, create unnecessary divisions, or leave her vulnerable. But prayer, fasting, meditation on the Word, and alignment with God's will give her the wisdom to respond with precision, not panic. A woman engaged in spiritual warfare also understands authority. She knows that she has been given power not to dominate, but to declare. She doesn't need to prove herself through confrontation. She asserts her authority through faith. When she speaks words of life, when she prays with intention, and when she commands truth in the name of God, she sees results that are far more effective than any physical retaliation could achieve. Spiritual authority is unstoppable because it is rooted in the eternal, not the temporary. Reacting in the flesh can often escalate situations and prolong conflict. It can create resentment, division, and regret. Spiritual warfare transforms situations from within. It changes the atmosphere, opens the eyes of the blind, softens hardened hearts, and brings breakthrough that human effort alone could never produce. She knows that a well-placed prayer, a righteous declaration, or a moment of intercession can turn an entire situation around. She has seen it happen too many times to doubt it. The woman who walks in spiritual warfare over physical reaction also carries an unusual peace. She may face criticism, slander, or opposition. She is not shaken. Her confidence does not come from defeating her adversaries with words or actions, from trusting in the one who fights her battles for her. She doesn't need to prove that she is right. She needs only to be faithful. And her faithfulness, expressed through spiritual diligence, produces results that often seem miraculous. In addition, spiritual warfare teaches patience, trains her to wait for the right moment, to discern the perfect timing, and to recognize that immediate retaliation is not always the best solution. Enemy may want her to react hastily, to let anger dictate her actions, or to engage in fruitless conflict. But she resists that temptation, choosing instead to fight from the Spirit. Her victories are therefore lasting, not fleeting. They are grounded in divine strategy, not human emotion. Every trial she faces becomes a training ground for spiritual warfare. Every betrayal, insult, or setback is an opportunity to refine her strategy and strengthen her faith. She learns to rely on prayer over panic, on faith over fear, on wisdom over impulse. She discovers that true victory comes not from the clash of fists, but from the alignment of her spirit with the power of God. When she prays, she releases divine influence that cannot be measured by natural standards. When she declares truth, she shifts realities in ways the world cannot comprehend. A woman engaged in spiritual warfare also understands the importance of intercession. She fights not only for herself, but for her family, her friends, her community, and even for those who oppose her. She carries burdens that others cannot see, lifting them in prayer and releasing the power of God into situations that seem hopeless. Her prayers penetrate dimensions that physical actions cannot touch. Her faith breaks chains. Her worship shatters strongholds. Her declaration of truth displaces lies and fear. Her spiritual warfare is disciplined. It requires consistency, intentionality, and alignment with God's word. She doesn't sporadically pray or react only when desperate. She cultivates a lifestyle of spiritual vigilance, knowing that the enemy never sleeps. Her strategy involves preparation, endurance, deep understanding of spiritual principles. This is what sets her apart. While others may exhaust themselves fighting in the flesh, she conserves her energy for the battles that truly matter, and she engages them with divine strength. Finally, the woman who chooses spiritual warfare over physical reaction becomes a beacon of hope and authority. People look at her and see composure in chaos, faith in adversity, and power in restraint. Her life testifies to the truth that spiritual strength transcends human limitation. She teaches others that the most effective fight is often the one waged on your knees in the quiet of your heart with the authority of God behind you. She exemplifies the truth that battles are not always won by reaction. They are won by righteousness, prayer, and unwavering faith. In every trial, she remembers this: a physical fight may win a moment, but spiritual warfare wins a lifetime. The enemy may try to provoke her, intimidate her, or manipulate her. He cannot overcome a woman who knows the power of prayer, the authority of God, and the strategy of spiritual warfare. She does not fight for attention. She does not fight for validation. She fights from a place of alignment with heaven, and that makes her unstoppable. In the end, spiritual warfare over physical reaction is a choice to rise above human instinct and walk in divine strategy. It is a refusal to be consumed by anger, fear, or pride. It is a commitment to pray, to trust, to intercede, and to act only in alignment with God's plan. It is the mark of a woman who is not merely surviving but thriving, not merely reacting but reigning, not merely present but powerful. And that is why she is dangerous. Not because she strikes with her hands, but because she moves with the Spirit. Not because she shouts her victory, because she secures it in heaven. Not because she fights in the flesh, but because she conquers in the Spirit. Her power is eternal. Her strategy is divine. Victory is unstoppable. There is a sacred authority in the voice of a woman who prays, a power that goes far beyond human understanding. When she speaks with faith, the heavens respond. When she declares truth, chains are broken. When she whispers a word of surrender or praise, atmosphere shifts. She has discovered that her words are not mere sounds. They are seeds. They carry weight. They carry life. They carry destiny. Heaven moves when she speaks because she is aligned with the source of all power. Spirit works through her voice to accomplish what she could never accomplish on her own. A woman who speaks in faith understands that words are not trivial. Every syllable carries significance. Every sentence can summon miracles. Every declaration can shape reality. She knows that what she speaks in alignment with God's will is unstoppable. While the world may rely on strategies, force, or influence, she relies on the authority of heaven. She has learned that the power in her words is greater than the power in her circumstances, greater than the opposition around her, and greater than any challenge that seeks to overwhelm her. She understands that speaking in faith is not about volume. It's about authority. She does not need to shout to be heard. She needs to speak with alignment. Her words, seasoned by prayer and guided by wisdom, carry power. Heaven does not move in response to panic or anger, but in response to faith, obedience, and alignment. Every declaration she makes is an activation of divine principle. Every promise she proclaims in agreement with God's word becomes a chain breaker. Every hope she voices becomes a blueprint for breakthrough. There is a discipline in her speech. She does not speak rashly or impulsively. She does not allow emotions or external pressures to dictate her words. She understands the weight of what comes out of her mouth. The tongue, she knows, can bring life or death. She chooses life. She chooses faith. She chooses words that build, affirm, and release power. And as she does, heaven responds. When she speaks, miracles begin to manifest. Doors that were closed begin to open. Situations that seemed impossible begin to shift. Relationships that were strained begin to restore. Opportunities that were hidden begin to appear. Her words are not just statements, they are activations of divine movement. The atmosphere responds to her faith-filled voice because it is no longer governed by human limitations. It is governed by God's authority through her lips. Woman who speaks in alignment with God understands timing. She knows that heaven does not move according to the world's clock, but according to divine timing. Her words are planted in the soil of faith and cultivated by patience. She does not demand immediate results. She trusts that what is spoken in obedience and faith will produce fruit at the right time. Her declarations are not temporary. They are eternal. They ripple through time, shaping destinies and influencing generations. She also recognizes the power of spoken intercession. When she prays aloud for others, heaven responds on their behalf. Her voice becomes a channel of blessing, protection, and transformation. She does not pray from fear, but from authority. She does not pray from doubt, but from unwavering faith. And because of that, her words move not only her own mountains, but also the mountains in the lives of those she loves, the communities she influences, and even in situations that seem beyond repair. Moves when she speaks because she speaks with faith, not frustration, with purpose, not panic, with vision, not vanity. She has learned to speak life over death, hope over despair, and victory over defeat. Her words have the capacity to shift atmospheres, change outcomes, and release blessings. She does not rely on her own strength. She relies on God's power manifested through her voice. There is an authority in her voice because it is rooted in truth. She does not speak empty promises or wishful thinking. She declares the word of God and aligns her speech with his promises. She speaks with conviction because she knows that what is spoken in alignment with God cannot be undone. Every affirmation of faith becomes a declaration of victory. Every spoken prayer becomes a legal mandate in the spiritual realm. Every word of praise releases unseen forces that work tirelessly on her behalf. Her speech is intentional. She has learned that words carelessly spoken can bring destruction, but words intentionally spoken in faith bring restoration. She does not gossip, complain, slander. She speaks hope, encouragement, and life. Her communication carries weight because she has cultivated wisdom, discipline, deep connection with God. She is a woman whose mouth has become a conduit for divine movement. When she speaks, heaven bends. When she praises, angels are deployed. When she proclaims truth, darkness flees. When she calls forth her destiny, chains break. The spiritual realm responds to her obedience, faith, and her alignment. She has discovered that her words are not limited by the natural world. She speaks beyond circumstances, beyond impossibilities, beyond human limitation. Her voice is a tool of transformation. Even in the midst of trials, she speaks. Even when hope seems distant, she declares faith. Even when the enemy seeks to intimidate her, she proclaims victory. Her voice becomes her weapon, her shield, and her instrument of change. She has learned that silence may protect her, but speaking in faith empowers her. Heaven moves when she speaks because she is not speaking from the flesh. She is speaking from the Spirit. Every word she speaks carries potential. Every prayer she utters ignites movement. Every declaration she makes releases power. She understands that faith without words is dormant, but faith expressed through speech activates heaven. She does not underestimate the force of her voice because she knows that God uses her speech to fulfill his purposes. In her life, speaking in faith is a lifestyle. It is not occasional, it is consistent. She speaks truth, hope, and faith in every situation, whether she is in private or in public. She declares blessings over her home, her family, her career, her ministry, and her community. She speaks words of healing over sickness, provision over poverty, and protection over danger. Her speech becomes the channel through which heaven's power flows into the earth. Ultimately, moves when she speaks because she has learned the secret that many overlook words carry authority when they are rooted in God. She speaks not to impress, to argue, and not to dominate, but to align with the ultimate power. She understands that her voice is more than sound, it is influence. More than expression, it is impact. More than a tool, it is a testimony. A woman who prays, who declares, who speaks in faith. She knows that her words are never wasted. They are seeds planted in the soil of heaven, watered by the Spirit, destined to produce fruit. She has learned that speaking with faith is not just about change. It is about transformation. Not just about results, it is about revelation. Not just about her life, it is about the movement of God through her life. That is why heaven moves when she speaks, not because of her ability, but because of her alignment. Not because of her effort, but because of her obedience. Not because of her passion, but because of her faith. Her words carry weight, her prayers carry power, and her voice carries authority. She is a force to be reckoned with, a channel for divine intervention, and a living testament that when a woman aligned with God speaks, heaven cannot remain silent. There is a kind of power and peace that the world often overlooks. The world measures strength by noise, by dominance, confrontation. But a woman who walks in peace carries a power far greater than any physical force. Peace is not the absence of conflict. It is the presence of God in the midst of it. Peace is not weakness, it is wisdom. Peace is not compromise, it is conquest. She has discovered that when she holds her peace, she is not giving up, she is winning. Because victory is not always found in fighting harder, arguing louder, defending more aggressively. Victory is often found in stillness, in trust, in surrender, and in faith. A woman who understands peace knows that it is a deliberate choice, not a passive state. It is the decision to trust God's timing, to rely on His provision, to rest in His sovereignty even when circumstances scream otherwise. She does not allow fear, anger, or anxiety to dictate her response. She knows that peace protects her, strengthens her, and positions her for triumph. While others exhaust themselves in chaos, she conserves her energy, relying on the Spirit to guide her through storms that would break ordinary women. Her peace is her shield, her anchor, and her victory. Peace begins with trust. She trusts God even when the road is uncertain, even when the outcome is unclear, even when the enemy appears to have the upper hand. Her trust is not blind. It is informed by her faith, by her understanding of God's promises, and by her personal experience of His faithfulness. Because she trusts, she is not easily shaken. She does not allow doubts, gossip, or fear to rob her joy. She knows that those who have peace in the midst of trials are the ones who walk out of them stronger, wiser, and victorious. Her peace also comes from perspective. She sees beyond the temporary struggles, the fleeting disappointments, and the immediate setbacks. She understands that God is orchestrating every detail of her life for her ultimate good, and that gives her confidence to remain calm. Where others panic, she prays. Where others argue, she listens. Where others react impulsively, she responds with wisdom. Her perspective transforms every challenge into a stepping stone, every trial into a teacher, and every delay into preparation. A peaceful woman does not let circumstances control her. She refuses to be manipulated by chaos, intimidated by threats, or derailed by distractions. Her peace acts as a barrier, keeping negativity, fear, and opposition from infiltrating her mind, heart, and spirit. While the enemy tries to provoke reactions, she remains composed. While society pushes for immediate responses, she waits for divine direction. While conflict surrounds her, she centers herself on the unshakable presence of God, and in doing so, she turns every potential defeat into an opportunity for triumph. Peace is also her source of clarity. When she maintains inner calm, her mind remains sharp, her vision remains clear, and her decisions remain sound. She does not make choices based on panic or pressure. She makes choices based on wisdom and alignment with God's will. Peace allows her to evaluate situations carefully, respond strategically, and act decisively. She understands that a rushed response often leads to regret. A peace-filled response leads to victory. Her victory through peace is visible in the way she handles opposition. When others attack, provoke, or criticize, she does not retaliate in kind. She does not escalate situations unnecessarily. She chooses restraint not out of fear, but out of faith. Composure becomes a testimony to the power of God working through her. People around her may not understand it, but they feel it. They sense the stability, confidence, and the authority that comes from walking in peace. Peace also amplifies her influence. A woman who maintains peace under pressure becomes a magnet for wisdom, guidance, and leadership. Others naturally gravitate toward her because they recognize strength in her calm. She inspires confidence, instills hope, commands respect without raising her voice. Her victory is not loud or ostentatious. It is quiet, steady, and unstoppable. Peace is the signal that she has mastered herself, and mastery of self is the foundation for influence over circumstances. She understands that peace is not passive, it is powerful. It is an active choice to rely on God's presence rather than human approval, to remain grounded in faith rather than swayed by fear, and to stay centered in truth rather than distracted by deception. She recognizes that inner peace creates outer power. It gives her the ability to navigate storms with dignity, to lead with clarity, to impact others without being consumed by chaos. Her peace also protects her relationships. She does not allow arguments, misunderstandings, or resentment to fester. Instead, she approaches conflict with calmness and seeks resolution through wisdom and grace. She understands that peace preserves unity, nurtures trust, and strengthens connections in her home, workplace, and community. Her calm presence brings stability and hope. People know that when she speaks, it is with intention, love, and authority, not with impulsive emotion. A woman who embraces peace sees obstacles differently. She recognizes that challenges are not the end of the story, they are the setup for breakthrough. She does not allow setbacks to define her. She allows faith to guide her. When disappointment comes, she responds with prayer, patience, and perseverance. When criticism comes, she responds with reflection and discernment. When injustice comes, she responds with trust in God's ultimate justice. Her peace allows her to rise above temporary struggles and remain focused on her destiny. Peace becomes her testimony. It tells the world that she is grounded in something greater than circumstance. It signals to the enemy that his schemes cannot shake her. It reassures those around her that stability, strength, and faith are possible even in the midst of chaos. Peace is her declaration that she is aligned with heaven, that she trusts God's timing. No external force can alter the course God has set for her life. Her victory through peace is not limited to her own life. By maintaining calm and faith-filled composure, she impacts generations. Children see resilience modeled. Communities witness wisdom in action. Opponents experience restraint that inspires reflection. Her peace has a ripple effect, influencing not only her immediate environment, but also the spiritual atmosphere around her. She knows that victory is not measured by what she conquers in the moment, but by the legacy she builds through faith, wisdom, and calm perseverance. While others fight and exhaust themselves in the chaos of life, she walks in divine strategy, trusting that God's power will accomplish what human effort cannot. Her victory is rooted in alignment. Her strength is anchored in faith. Influence extends far beyond what eyes can see. Peace is her ultimate weapon. It silences criticism, diffuses conflict, and overcomes fear. Positions her above every attack, every delay, and every deception. Her calmness is a sign of unshakable faith, unwavering trust, and divine alignment. Because of that, peace becomes more than a state of mind. It becomes a declaration of victory. No storm can overwhelm her. No trial can defeat her. Enemy can intimidate her. She has chosen peace, and in that choice, she has already won. Peace is her armor. Peace is her authority. Peace is her victory. She does not fight impulsively. She does not argue unnecessarily. And she does not give in to fear. She walks in calm confidence, grounded in God, powered by faith, and victorious by choice. In the end, peace is more than serenity. It is supremacy. More than tranquility. It is triumph. More than quiet. It is conquest. Woman who walks in peace demonstrates that true victory is not always found in the noise of struggle, but in the quiet confidence of trust. She is unstoppable, unshakable, and undefeated because she has discovered that peace is the ultimate expression of power. There is a strength in a woman who refuses to be defined by her pain. There is a power in a woman who has been hurt but refuses to remain broken. Life has a way of testing us, trials, disappointments, betrayals, heartbreaks, and losses. Yet, the woman who understands how to transform pain into power does not allow circumstances to dictate her destiny. She refuses to let grief, hurt, or struggle remain as chains. Instead, she turns every wound into a wellspring, every tear into testimony, and every setback into a setup for greater victory. Pain is inevitable, but defeat is optional. She has learned that suffering is not the enemy. It is the teacher. Pain is the crucible in which her character is forged. It is the furnace in which her faith is strengthened. She has discovered that the very experiences that should have broken her are the experiences that make her unstoppable. Every disappointment, every heartbreak, every moment of loneliness is transformed by her refusal to be consumed by it. She does not dwell on the hurt, she draws wisdom from it. She does not nurse bitterness, she cultivates resilience. Transforming pain into power begins with perspective. She chooses to see trials not as obstacles, but as opportunities. She recognizes that every hardship carries within it the potential to refine her, to prepare her, and to elevate her. Others see despair, she sees destiny. Where others see failure, she sees foundation. Where others see limitations, she sees lessons. Her eyes are fixed not on the problem, but on the purpose behind it. She knows that God's plan for her life cannot be thwarted by temporary setbacks. Transformation begins with faith. Pain may whisper lies of inadequacy, fear, and defeat, but she refuses to listen. Instead, she listens to the voice of God. She believes that every trial is temporary, every sorrow has an expiration date, and every struggle carries the seeds of triumph. Her faith turns weakness into strength. It turns despair into hope. It turns defeat into a declaration of victory. She understands that her power is not determined by the absence of pain, but by her response to it. Woman who transforms pain into power embraces self-reflection. She looks inward to understand how her experiences shape her character, her decisions, and her purpose. She does not blame others or wallow in victimhood. She analyzes, learns, and grows. She asks hard questions, seeks understanding, and applies wisdom gained through struggle. Her pain becomes a teacher, not a jailer. It molds her, refines her, and equips her for greater challenges ahead. She also uses pain as a platform for empathy and influence. Having faced trials, she can now minister to others. Having experienced hurt, she can now comfort those who are hurting. Her scars become her credentials, her story becomes her strategy, and her journey becomes her ministry. She understands that power is not just personal, it is relational. Transforming her pain allows her to lift others, guide them, inspire them to rise above their own struggles. The transformation of pain into power requires resilience. She does not give up when the road is difficult. She does not quit when the nights are long and the days are heavy. She presses forward even when hope seems distant. Her resilience is fueled by the knowledge that pain is temporary, but the lessons and strength gained from it are eternal. She draws courage from every challenge, determination from every defeat, and wisdom from every failure. She knows that the endurance built in hardship is the foundation for every future victory. Her power is also spiritual. She understands that the battles she faces are not just physical, emotional, or relational, they are spiritual. Pain often has a purpose beyond what she can see. It is designed to stretch her faith, deepen her prayer life, and strengthen her character. By seeking God's guidance and leaning on His strength, she transforms every trial into triumph. Her hurt becomes holy ground. Her struggles become spiritual victories, and her brokenness becomes a bridge to greater blessing. She refuses to allow pain to define her identity. The world may try to label her based on her failures, mistakes, or disappointments. Society may attempt to confine her based on her hardships. She knows that her value, her purpose, and her destiny are not defined by what she has suffered. They are defined by who she is in God. She chooses to rise above labels, expectations, and limitations. Pain is no longer a prison. It is her proving ground. Her transformation is also practical. She learns to take the lessons from hardship and apply them to her life. She becomes wiser in her decisions, stronger in her boundaries, more disciplined in her habits. Pain teaches discernment, patience, and strategy. She discovers that mistakes and failures are not endings, they are instructions. Each experience equips her to navigate life with greater clarity, confidence, competence. She does not merely survive, she thrives. She also recognizes the power of perspective in shaping her narrative. She chooses not to dwell on what was taken from her, but on what is being prepared for her. She focuses on growth, opportunity, purpose rather than bitterness, regret, and resentment. Her pain becomes a lens through which she sees the world more clearly. She understands the value of gratitude even in trials, and she embraces the lessons hidden in every difficult season. Transforming pain into power also requires forgiveness. She understands that holding on to anger, resentment, or bitterness only prolongs her suffering. Forgiving those who hurt her, she frees herself to move forward. Forgiveness does not mean excusing wrongs. It means releasing the emotional weight and reclaiming her power. In forgiveness, she discovers freedom, clarity, and renewed strength. Her energy is no longer consumed by the past. It is invested in her future. Her power manifests in action. She takes what she has learned from hardship and turns it into service, ministry, leadership, and innovation. Her pain propels her to accomplish, to inspire, and to transform. She becomes a living testament that adversity can be an accelerator rather than a barrier. Her victories are not only for her own life, they ripple into communities, families, and generations. Influence multiplies because she refused to allow pain to silence her, diminish her, or deter her. She transforms pain into power through perseverance. Every tear becomes fuel. Every heart attach becomes motivation. Every struggle becomes preparation. She does not allow herself to be stuck in despair. She refuses to give power to circumstances. She presses forward step by step, prayer by prayer, until the pain is no longer a weight. It is a weapon. Ultimately, the woman who transforms pain into power becomes unstoppable. She demonstrates that true strength is not the absence of suffering, it is the ability to rise above it. True authority is not in comfort, it is in overcoming. True victory is not measured by the lack of trials, it is measured by the grace, wisdom, and resilience gained in the midst of them. Her life becomes proof that pain, when processed through faith, reflection, resilience, and wisdom, can be transformed into power that nothing can resist. Pain may have entered her life, but it does not own her. Pain may have tested her, but it did not defeat her. Pain may have tried to shape her identity. She reshaped it with purpose, faith, and vision. She has discovered the secret that many never learned. Every wound carries a lesson. Every struggle carries a gift, and every hardship can be transformed into the fuel for her next victory. A woman who transforms pain into power becomes a force to be reckoned with. Her story inspires, her resilience motivates, her life testifies that suffering is not a sentence, it is a springboard. She is proof that pain, when surrendered to God, can be converted into purpose, destiny, and unstoppable power. Her past does not define her, her circumstances do not confine her, and her struggles do not dictate her future. She is stronger, wiser, and more powerful because she chose to rise above pain, and in doing so, she becomes a living example of triumph through trials. There is a unique power in the faith of a woman who refuses to be shaken by circumstance. Her faith is not superficial or fleeting. It is deep, resilient, and unwavering. It is a force that confounds the enemy because it does not react according to the rules of the natural world. Where doubt would make others panic, faith brings calm. Where fear would cause retreat, her faith causes advance. Where despair would silence voices, her faith makes declarations that shake heavens and earth alike. Her faith confuses the enemy because it is rooted not in what she sees, in what she knows to be true about God. The enemy is accustomed to confronting resistance born of fear, hesitation, or indecision. He expects that trials will produce despair, setbacks will produce retreat, and opposition will produce compromise. But a woman whose faith is firmly planted in God does not follow predictable patterns. She does not flinch when storms rage. She does not crumble when darkness looms. She does not bow to pressure or panic. Her faith moves in ways the enemy cannot anticipate, and it unsettles him because he cannot manipulate, intimidate, or control a spirit anchored in divine truth. Her faith is strategic. It is not a naive optimism, a deliberate alignment with God's promises. She has studied His word, meditated on His character, and cultivated an unshakable trust in His timing. When others react impulsively to challenges, she responds with prayer and discernment. When others focus on problems, she focuses on God. When others lose hope, she holds firm in expectation. Her faith is a living, active force that directs her steps, influences her decisions, and governs her reactions. Because her faith is unwavering, the enemy cannot predict her moves. He cannot anticipate her responses. He cannot discern her strategy. She is not defeated by deception because she discerns through prayer. She is not dismayed by delay because she trusts the plan of God. She is not distracted by threats because she relies on divine protection. Her faith transforms her from a reactive participant into a proactive powerhouse. And it is precisely this unpredictability, rooted in divine alignment, that confuses the enemy at every turn. Her faith is also a shield. In the face of attack, whether verbal, relational, financial, or spiritual, she does not crumble. She does not retaliate in anger, nor does she cower in fear. She stands firm, not because of her own strength, but because of the power of God dwelling within her. Every trial that should have broken her instead strengthens her. Every obstacle that should have stopped her instead sharpens her discernment and endurance. Her faith protects her from the enemy's schemes, making him frustrated because he cannot penetrate the armor of trust she wears. The enemy is also confounded by the audacity of her faith. She believes in God's promises even when circumstances suggest otherwise. She hopes when hope seems impossible. She prays when the situation feels hopeless. She speaks life over death, blessing over curse, victory over defeat. Confidence is not in human reasoning or circumstance. It is in the unchanging, omnipotent, and faithful God. This level of faith is unpredictable and unstoppable, leaving the enemy bewildered because he cannot anticipate the source, scope, or strategy of her power. Her faith confuses the enemy because it is active. It is not passive or dormant. She does not merely believe silently. She acts in accordance with her trust. She takes steps of courage, makes decisions with confidence, and aligns her life with God's will. Every action she takes, driven by faith, undermines the enemy's plans. What he intends for harm, her faith turns to blessing. What he plots for destruction, her faith transforms into opportunity. What he designs to discourage, her faith converts into victory. He cannot counter what is powered by divine truth. The enemy is also confounded by her resilience. Her faith keeps her standing even when others fall. Even when setbacks occur, her belief in God's purpose remains intact. Even when her expectations are delayed, she continues to trust. She refuses to allow frustration, disappointment, or delay to dictate her attitude. Her faith is her anchor in turbulent waters, and her stability unsettles the enemy because he knows he cannot shake her. She confounds the enemy with her praise. Even in the midst of trials, she worships. Even in the face of impossibility, she glorifies God. Even when circumstances are heavy, she celebrates his goodness. Her joy is not circumstantial, it is spiritual. Her peace is not dependent on the world, it is supernatural. And when she praises, proclaims with unwavering belief, the enemy is disoriented because he cannot understand how someone can remain steadfast, joyful, victorious in the midst of what should be chaos. Her faith also confuses the enemy because it is anchored in hope, not fear. She sees beyond current difficulties to the promises of God. She focuses on the eternal, not the temporary. She trusts in provision, protection, and guidance, even when the road is uncertain. Her hope is active. It motivates action, fosters courage, and cultivates endurance. The enemy cannot destroy what is rooted in hope because it operates beyond the reach of human interference. The enemy is further confounded because her faith produces fruit. It is not theoretical or idle. It yields results. Doors open, blessings manifest, relationships restore, and victories come. She demonstrates through her life that faith is not just belief. It is the engine of transformation. The enemy cannot predict where the next triumph will come from because it is powered by divine authority, not human effort. Her outcomes are supernatural. Her consistency in pursuing God's promises leaves the enemy perplexed and frustrated. She confounds the enemy through her unshakable confidence. She does not depend on validation from the world. She does not measure success by temporary applause or recognition. She measures her life by alignment with God's will. Her confidence is a product of faith, not circumstance. It is steady, enduring, and unmovable. Stability bewilders the enemy because it undermines every strategy of doubt, fear, and manipulation he tries to deploy. Faith also confuses the enemy because it inspires others. Her unwavering belief becomes a testimony that strengthens those around her. It sparks hope, encourages resilience, and promotes courage. The enemy cannot predict the multiplier effect of her faith because every declaration, every prayer, every act of obedience ripples beyond her life, influencing families, communities, and generations. Her faith is not contained. It is contagious, unstoppable, unpredictable. Ultimately, her faith confuses the enemy because it is supernatural. He cannot counter God's power. He cannot anticipate the timing of divine intervention. He cannot manipulate the strategies of the Spirit. Her faith operates beyond the natural realm, in alignment with the eternal and in cooperation with the Almighty. It is not limited by circumstance, logic, or human expectation. It is untouchable, unshakable, and undeniable. A woman whose faith confuses the enemy demonstrates that true power is not in fighting harder. It is in trusting deeper. It is not in controlling outcomes. It is in surrendering to God's plan. It is not in reacting impulsively. It is in walking faithfully, praying consistently, declaring confidently. Her life becomes a testimony that faith is the ultimate weapon, the unshakable shield, and the divine strategy that confounds opposition. She does not merely survive challenges, she thrives through them. She does not merely endure trials, she conquers them. She does not merely exist, she advances in alignment with God's promises. Her faith is a living, breathing force that disrupts the enemy's schemes, overturns despair, and produces victory. Heaven moves in response to her obedience. Enemy is left bewildered, powerless, and frustrated because he cannot predict, understand, or counter the faith of a woman who is aligned with God. Her faith confuses the enemy because it is unrelenting, it is steadfast, unwavering, and resilient. It refuses to bend, break, or bow to fear. Thrives in storms, shines in darkness, and speaks in the silence. She walks by faith, not by sight, and in doing so, she becomes unstoppable. And that is the power of her faith. It moves mountains, defies logic, shifts the supernatural, leaves the enemy unable to comprehend how a woman could be so strong, so steady, and so victorious. There is a force that no man, no circumstance, no enemy, no limitation can ever counter, and that force is prayer. For the woman who prays, nothing is impossible. Prayer is not merely a routine, a ritual, or a habit. It is her weapon, her source of strength, and her connection to the Almighty. Through prayer, she taps into a power that transcends human limitation, power that moves mountains, shifts atmospheres, and changes destinies. Prayer makes her unstoppable because it links her to the one who holds the universe in his hands. The woman who prays understands that prayer is not optional, it is essential. It is not a last resort, it is her first line of defense. She does not rely on her own strength, intelligence, or strategy alone. She relies on the power of God released through her petitions. She prays not because she doubts her ability, but because she knows that when she partners with the Almighty, there is no force that can overcome her. Challenge she faces, every obstacle in her path, every adversary who rises against her is rendered powerless when confronted by the weapon of consistent, faith-filled prayer. Prayer fuels her resilience. Life is not easy, and the enemy is relentless. She encounters disappointment, betrayal, setbacks, and trials. But she does not give in to despair. She does not surrender to frustration. She does not crumble under pressure. She prays. Through prayer, she draws strength beyond what the world can offer. She replenishes her spirit, restores her hope, and refocuses her mind on the promises of God. She understands that prayer is the engine that drives perseverance, the lifeline that sustains endurance, and the source of peace in the midst of storms. Through prayer, she gains clarity. When circumstances are confusing, when decisions are overwhelming, and when the path ahead seems unclear, she prays. In the quiet of prayer, she hears God's voice, receives guidance, and gains wisdom. Prayer aligns her with the divine plan, enabling her to make choices with confidence. It prevents mistakes that come from impulsivity, fear, or human limitation. Her unstoppable nature is rooted in the fact that she does not operate on instinct alone. She operates under divine direction. Prayer makes her unstoppable because it transforms her perspective. She sees beyond the natural circumstances and focuses on the promises of God. While others may be intimidated by obstacles, she sees opportunities for breakthrough. While others may focus on scarcity, she focuses on provision. While others may be paralyzed by fear, she is propelled by faith. Prayer allows her to shift her vision from the problem to the promise, from the challenge to the champion within her, and from limitation to limitless possibilities. She also understands that prayer is a declaration of authority. When she prays, she does not merely ask. She commands, declares, and decrees in alignment with God's will. She understands that the authority of heaven flows through her petitions, that the angels are dispatched, and that divine intervention is activated. The unseen realms respond to her words spoken in faith. Every prayer is a force that cannot be ignored. Every declaration is a move of power. Every faithful petition confuses the enemy and strengthens position in the natural and spiritual realms. Her prayer life equips her for spiritual warfare. She knows that the enemy is real, that his tactics are persistent, and that his goal is to steal, kill, and destroy. But prayer is her weapon of war. Through prayer, she gains insight into the enemy's schemes, fortifies her spirit, and releases supernatural power that no human hand could generate. She does not rely on confrontation alone. She relies on the unseen, yet unstoppable force of God working through her intercession. Her prayers are not powerless. They are precision, guided attacks on the forces that seek to hinder her purpose. Prayer strengthens her influence. She impacts not only her own life, but also the lives of those around her. Through prayer, she intercedes for family, friends, communities, and nations. Voice becomes a channel of blessing, healing, protection, and provision. She becomes unstoppable not only because of what she accomplishes personally, but because of the ripple effect of her prayer. Lives are changed, circumstances are altered, and destinies are realigned because she took the time to pray. Prayer transforms her from a woman navigating life to a woman shaping life. Consistency in prayer is the secret to her unstoppable nature. She does not pray only when she is in crisis. She does not lift her voice only when desperate. She prays daily, intentionally, and persistently. Her prayer life is the foundation of her character, the anchor of her soul, and the source of her confidence. Because she maintains a constant connection with God, she moves through life with supernatural endurance, insight, and authority. She is prepared for challenges before they arrive because prayer has already paved the way. Prayer also transforms fear into faith. When uncertainty comes, she prays. When anxiety threatens, she prays. When obstacles loom large, she prays. Through prayer, she replaces doubt with confidence, fear with courage, limitation with possibility. Her unstoppable spirit is rooted in the understanding that the battle belongs to the Lord. His power is made perfect in her weakness, and that every situation is an opportunity for God to show up on her behalf. Her prayers create alignment. They synchronize her will with God's will, her vision with his vision, and her timing with his timing. She does not operate out of impulse or human desire alone. She operates under divine orchestration. Prayer positions her strategically, protecting her from unnecessary setbacks and guiding her toward opportunities that advance her destiny. The enemy may attempt to obstruct her path. Prayer ensures that she walks in alignment with divine timing and supernatural favor. Prayer makes her unstoppable because it fosters patience. She does not rush the process, demand immediate results, or attempt shortcuts. She trusts God's timing and waits faithfully for his promises to manifest. While others grow weary, she remains steadfast. While others complain, she continues interceding. While others grow anxious, she maintains composure. Power is multiplied because she understands that victory is as much about timing as it is about effort, and prayer positions her to act at the perfect moment. Prayer equips her with supernatural insight. She discerns opportunities, avoids pitfalls, and navigates challenges with precision. She hears God's guidance, receives clarity in decision-making, and interprets situations beyond the natural. Her foresight is sharpened through prayer, making her a strategist who is both prepared and protected. The enemy cannot anticipate her moves because she operates from divine intelligence, limited human reasoning. Prayer also transforms her resilience into results. She faces obstacles, but she does not falter. She faces opposition. She does not quit. She faces impossibilities, but she advances. Through prayer, she discovers strength that is limitless, courage that is unshakable, and endurance that is unrelenting. Her life becomes a testimony that no force can stop someone aligned with God, fueled by faith, and activated through prayer. Finally, prayer makes her unstoppable because it's a declaration of partnership with God. She understands that she does not fight alone, struggle alone, navigate life alone. She is connected to the Creator, the Sustainer, and the Almighty. Her prayers are not mere words. They are agreements with heaven, commands of faith, and acts of spiritual authority. Through prayer, she moves from limitation to liberation, from challenge to conquest. From possibility to manifestation, her life testifies that prayer is the ultimate equalizer. No matter the circumstances, no matter the opposition, no matter the odds, a woman who prays cannot be defeated. She becomes unstoppable because she relies on the eternal, not the temporal, on the unseen, not the visible, on God, not human effort. Her victory is inevitable, her power is undeniable, and her influence is limitless. A woman who prays is unstoppable because she has discovered the secret the world cannot replicate: consistent, intentional, faith-filled prayer aligns her with heaven, fortifies her spirit, and activates divine power that moves mountains, shifts destinies, changes the course of her life. She is not merely surviving, she is prevailing. She is not merely walking, she is advancing. She is not merely existing, she is unstoppable.